Here we go, folks, another Blu-ray and DVD update, this time for March/April of 2024. So let's start off with the Blu-rays. First up, we have a film by Luc Besson, a director that I find to be very imaginative, but this film felt very grounded and was a lot more character-specific, of course being Leon, also known as Leon the Professional, and this Blu-ray includes both the theatrical and the director's cut, which I watched the latter. And my brother recommended this film, and I was overall very surprised at how such a simplistic premise could be so captivating. Leon, played by Jean Reno, I believe was based on a similar character the actor played in another Luc Besson film, that being La Femme Nikita, which I have sadly not seen that film as of yet, but I love this role and this character of a hitman appearing very cold-hearted, but all of that changes very quickly. And this is where we are introduced to Natalie Portman's character of Matilda, and this was, funnily enough, her acting debut. And the character's family is brutally killed, and it's up to Leon to protect her from a group of corrupt DEA agents. Overall, a great premise, there's a lot of fun, gory action to appreciate. Gary Oldman played a very memorable villain with a lot of quirks and ticks to his character, and I really enjoyed the chemistry between Matilda and Leon, where she learns how to be a killer/hitman, but there's also a very uncomfortable undertone to their friendship, which is very much pushed in the director's cut, where the girl has a crush on Leon, and the film really tries to push some kind of odd romance between them both. I wasn't a fan of that angle at all, for the obvious insinuations. But otherwise, the film is definitely worth checking out. There's a lot to appreciate about this character, and I really enjoyed the fun, gory action violence. Next up is Forbidden Planet, a movie that's been on my hit list for many years. It's a classic sci-fi piece from the 1950s, and this Blu-ray set overall I found to be very neatly put together. We have the main film itself restored into Blu-ray quality, we have a DVD copy of the film, and then as far as bonus features go, we have some incredible deleted scenes and lost footage, which I was very intrigued by, but to my surprise we have a whole of a movie included on here as well, that being The Invisible Boy, which I've never even heard of, so I'll definitely be sure to check that out at some point. But the film itself, I thought it was okay. A team of astronauts are sent to recover a spacecraft and its crew, only to discover the remnants of an abandoned civilization. And this film was definitely a film of the time, so to speak, that hasn't aged all that well in certain areas, such as all the male characters lusting after the one young female character. That was very predictable, and I was also very intrigued by the Robbie the Robot character, who had a hell of a lot more screen time than I thought he would have, and that character has been referenced across pop culture now for decades at this point. But I liked what the film was. There was something very elusively intriguing about the character of Dr. Morbius, played by Walter Pidgeon. The only downside to this film, really, in my eyes, was the underwhelming ending. I wasn't really all that interested in the main plot, and then the ending kind of ruined that to begin with anyway. So much, I was more intrigued by this very strange B-plot using the chef character, where it's casually implied that he is an alcoholic and he successfully replicates booze, using Robbie the Robot in secret, where by the end he's literally surrounded by hundreds of glass bottles. For a B-plot that was given, I guess, very little attention, that really cracked me up. But there's a lot to appreciate about the practical effects of this film, but I would definitely argue it's more a product of the time. If you like older, goofier kind of sci-fi stuff, I'm definitely going to recommend this for you, but otherwise, it is what it is. So that is Forbidden Planet. Next up we have Leviathan, a Russian film with English subtitles, and this one caught my attention with the stunning cover art. So minimalistic, but I love how they've captured the skeleton just washed up on the beach. And the film itself, oh boy, was this a very melancholy story that just got progressively sadder as it continued, with family drama involving a cheating wife, conflict of interest over acquiring land, a corrupt mayor official as the antagonist, and a murder investigation to top things off, literally all your favourites. Yeah, this film is definitely not for everybody. It's a heavy storyline with very little action, but the acting and the cinematography made this worth watching. The actor that plays the teenage boy pictured on the front cover, Roma, really impressed me in certain scenes, just pouring his heart and soul into his acting, where the storyline really got quite distressing in certain areas, where the family dynamic was crumbling around him. And weirdly, there were a lot of references to faith and believing in God, which kind of took me out of things, I guess because the premise revolves around stuff such as adultery, stealing, and murder, And to an extent, there was a character, a lawyer, that snaps when asked about faith in general, saying, "Why does it matter? I believe in facts." And that really resonated with me, just calling out all of these elements of belief where everything around all of these characters is just decimating into nothing. Overall, a very sad film. Like I said, perhaps not for everybody. It's very well acted, and for a drama, I really enjoyed the story, but I'm sure you could perhaps find something to appreciate from this film, even if you weren't a massive fan by the end. A film I've been looking to grab on Blu-ray for a while, we have Drive from 2011. Starring Ryan Gosling and Bryan Cranston, I believe this was based on a novel of the same name, and I'd be interested in checking that out as far as the original source material goes, because I feel that would add a lot more depth to the protagonist, where Gosling plays a stunt driver, working on movie sets by day but has a side hustle as a getaway driver by night. And the character is very introverted but begins to open up when a girl in his apartment block catches his eye, and he tries to date her until her husband and father of her child walks back into the picture, having completed his prison sentence. And I'll be honest, I was kinda losing interest in the film by that point, but I was immediately hooked back in when it's revealed that the husband owes money, leading to a very action-heavy second and third act. And by the end, I did have a lot of fun with this film. The soundtrack in particular was very enjoyable, plus it's always a treat to see Bryan Cranston in a role outside of Walter White, and I really liked the fatherly chemistry he had with Gosling's character. Overall, definitely worth checking out, a very intriguing film to say the least. Next up, we have a rewatch that I felt was definitely worth talking about on the channel, one of my all-time favourite movies, Neil Blomkamp's District 9. Every time I watch this film, I feel like I gain a further appreciation for its complexities, but this isn't your typical Americanized alien invasion film. Set in Johannesburg, South Africa, an alien mothership has been stuck hovering above the city for 2 decades, and aliens known colloquially as prawns are stranded with no means to get home. And so a team of government agents led by Wikus van der Merwe, played by Shatta Copley, are tasked with forcing the aliens out of the town and into new accommodation, which is essentially like a concentration camp. And the main hook for this film is where, in the process of trying to remove the aliens, Wikus becomes infected by an alien substance, and he goes through various stages of metamorphosis, essentially becoming an alien. And despite the film coming out in 2009, the CGI has aged phenomenally. I love the filming techniques, which blur the lines of realism, and Wikus' story in particular is fascinating, literally becoming what he was essentially sent to eradicate. I love the gory violence, teaming up with the alien character Christopher Johnson. What a name. Yeah, 100% worth watching. This film is easily one of the best modern sci-fi films to come out of the past couple of decades. I absolutely love this film, and maybe one day we will get the District 10 sequel we've all been clamoring for. If you've seen the ending to this film, then yeah, you'll definitely want to follow up, that's for sure. Moving on, we have a selection of Marvel titles, which I'll try and speed through these as quickly as I can, beginning with a couple of steelbook sets based on some Disney Plus shows. Yes, finally, streaming shows are being released onto physical media. Only took, what, nearly 5 years? Anyway, first up is Loki Season 1, which I've been trying to catch up on certain MCU titles since I kind of just lost interest around Infinity War / Endgame. I've watched a few things, such as the recent Spider-Man, but otherwise, meh, I just don't really care all that much if I'm being honest. But I am glad I watched Loki. I've reviewed this set on the channel for those that want to hear my full thoughts on the series, and to check out the steelbook in its entirety. It has a fun premise, reinventing the Loki character to be more of an anti-hero, and I really liked the Time Variance Authority and the Sacred Timeline being controlled by a bureaucratic government. Or is it? There's a twist for you, but overall, great show. Looking forward to when Season 2 gets a Blu-ray release later down the line. Next up is the complete series set of WandaVision, a show that I was pleasantly surprised by. It starts off relatively slow, but the pace soon picks up, setting up Wanda as a villainous protagonist. Her intentions are meaningful, but not ethical, where she enslaves an entire town to her will, creating her own perfect life after the death of Vision in Avengers Infinity War, and living in this bubble of grief, she's seen as a threat and starts lashing out when provoked by outsiders that are trying to do the right thing, and Elizabeth Olsen was fantastic throughout, and I loved how this set her up as the villain for the Doctor Strange sequel, and I absolutely loved this TV series by the end, definitely worth checking out. Speaking of, in a convenient segue, next up we have Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Overall, not a bad sequel, but I feel this would not have enough of an impact without WandaVision as a series setting up Wanda as the villain, where she truly does embrace the Scarlet Witch in this film. And diving deeper into the multiverse theory, Doctor Strange and Wong must protect a young girl called America Chavez, who has a unique superpower, being able to freely hop between parallel universes. And Wanda wants this power so she can hop to another reality and have the family that she has always dreamed about. Little does she realise these selfish intentions have disastrous consequences. Overall, some fun moments, some great cameos, and some really unique horror-inspired visuals. I feel director Sam Raimi was likely forced to hold back on certain ideas when it came to this film, which is a shame to cap people's creative potential, but then again, these are Marvel films we're talking about. Anyway, the film itself, I had a lot of fun with this for what it was. There's some unique visuals, and it's always great to get a Bruce Campbell sneaky cameo, especially with a fun reference to the Evil Dead franchise. I think I'd rather punch myself repeatedly in the face than watch this film again. X-Men Dark Phoenix, fuck me, this was awful. By far one of the worst films I have watched in a very long time. Definitely the worst of the Fox X-Men movies, where to my knowledge this was meant to be the beginning of yet another iteration of X-Men movies, but then the Fox Disney acquisition occurred a few years ago and those plans changed, perhaps for the better, where this time set in the 90s, despite the characters having not aged since their 70s and 80s counterparts, a space mission goes horribly wrong for the X-Men, resulting in Jean Grey becoming the Dark Phoenix. There's aliens involved, Charles Xavier throws a Jake Skywalker becoming a shell of his former self. I'd say most characters are not recognisable of what they were known for previously in other films, and the only part I genuinely really liked was the stuff revolving around Magneto, Michael Fassbender, returning once again to reprise that character, trying to live in peace in the middle of nowhere, which is, as always, interrupted. Otherwise, this was an awful sequel, very poorly written, poorly filmed, and a film that I hope to never ever see again. Next up we have the first Captain Marvel movie, starring Brie Larson as the title character, which I never bothered checking out this film initially. I believe it came out just before Avengers Endgame if memory serves, and it's another predictable origin story for a character that I personally had zero connection with. Samuel Jackson certainly does carry a lot of this film, along with the adorable cat character called Goose, who turns out to be a demonic alien creature, and it's not necessarily a bad film. Had this been made much sooner in the MCU, it might have been a lot more appreciated for what it was, but sadly it's just forgettable. It's a typical sort of 90s nostalgia-baiting film with forced attempts at giving context to mysteries we just don't care about. For example, how did Nick Fury lose his eye? It turns out a cat scratched it. Completely unnecessary for a gag that just wasn't even funny to begin with. If you're a Marvel completionist, then perhaps this is worth checking out, but otherwise, very meh kind of film. The only thing that I genuinely really did enjoy about it was the appearance of Ronan from the first Guardians of the Galaxy film, but even that was really short-lived. So that is Captain Marvel. With the news surrounding the Fantastic Four finally getting an MCU movie, I was intrigued enough to go back and check out the previous iterations of the Fantastic Four, and I had genuinely never seen either of these films before all the way through. And oh boy, they have not aged well at all. I'd say they were perhaps on a so bad it's good level, but that would be lying. The early mid-2000s really were a strange time for Marvel films, especially for stuff coming out of 20th Century Fox where it was either really good or really bad. And the first movie is a typical kind of origin story with, I guess, sort of goofy kind of predictable characters and some sort of generic heartfelt moments to appreciate, but I will say the only thing I really enjoyed from this first film was Julian McMahon playing Doctor Doom. He was arguably the most interesting part of the film, but he is very quickly defeated in a cheap final fight. And then we also have the sequel film, Rise of the Silver Surfer, which I believe was meant to be setting up a third film featuring Galactus as the main villain. This was definitely a sort of filler-type movie. It was very short, showing the heroes struggle to balance their personal lives and their newfound lives as superheroes. Doctor Doom does make a short-lived return, which was ultimately pointless, very forced, very underwhelming sequel overall, but still better than Fant4stick. Hopefully, the new film, when it comes to the MCU Fantastic Four movie, will break the curse, delivering a good Fantastic Four movie. Before we move on to the DVDs, next up we have a book/Netflix film adaptation that I wanted to talk about. Sharing the same name, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, and I will say, if you're going to look this up, be careful when searching that particular phrase, because Google and YouTube were very concerned for my safety when I did that. It's good to see those preventative measures there, but that genuinely caught me off guard. I wasn't thinking when I searched at that title, but the film itself caught my attention, written and directed by Charlie Kaufman, because I'm a big fan of his previous work. I love Being John Malkovich adaptation and the very underrated stop-motion film he was involved with, Anomalisa, and I was intrigued to watch the film, but I saw the book was very cheap on eBay, so I picked this up to check it out beforehand, and this is where we follow a young couple, Lucy and Jake, as they share stories whilst on a car journey to have dinner with Jake's parents, and throughout, Lucy is thinking of ending their relationship, but doesn't know if that is truly what she wants, and sneaking in a few horror tropes here and there, things aren't all what they appear to be, resulting in their relationship beginning to crack. Overall, it's certainly not a bad story at all. The ending is deliberately made to be convoluted. There's a really great twist in the book, which I really quite liked, revealing that Lucy, as the narrator, isn't necessarily a reliable narrator as such. And I really enjoyed how the characters were written, but compared to the film adaptation, the main characters were so much more likable in the book, I'll be honest. I didn't really enjoy the film all that much. There's some fun quirks and visuals, especially throughout the scenes set at Jake's parents' house, literally with them changing age and questioning the sort of passage of time, which was kind of bizarre, but Jessie Buckley and Jesse Plemons had zero chemistry as the young couple, and the film really does differ quite heavily from the book, where certain scenes are not included that I felt really helped deliver some interesting exposition for both characters. The film seems to heavily rely on a lot of specific references to other stories that perhaps you wouldn't connect with. Therefore, the film isn't really all that accessible to your average audience member. The book may be worth your time, but the film honestly didn't really do all that much for me. I wasn't really a big fan by the end. I love Kaufman's work, but that was definitely something that I just don't really have the urge to go back and rewatch. Next up we have Stand and Deliver, a film that I oddly picked up on through an episode of South Park of all things.
How do I reach these kids?
Story-wise, it is pretty generic as far as the telling of a true story goes, very similar to other films such as The Chorus or Dead Poets Society, where we follow a teacher with a unique method of approaching a class of dropouts who is able to successfully teach calculus. The only problem, the exam board doesn't believe in the students who are stereotyped as cheaters because of their cultural heritage, and there's some incredible acting in this film from Edward James Olmos, who plays the teacher character, Jamie Escalante, and I've only seen that actor in a handful of things, but compared to his role in Blade Runner or playing Admiral Adama in the reimagined Battlestar Galactica, he steals many scenes, being such a confident but caring presence, also having a sort of sarky kind of undertone, which I found very funny. There's some great humour throughout this film, definitely an uplifting story that I would recommend checking out. A film that I've been meaning to check out for ages, Manchester by the Sea. Oh man, this was yet another very heavy drama story, and it definitely does not hold back. Despite the sadness that ultimately consumes the main character of Lee, played by Casey Affleck, this is a great example of a conflicted personality, depressed and struggling with past trauma of losing his own family. Things suddenly get all the more complicated. He's stuck in limbo, trying to parent his teenage nephew when the boy's father passes away, and the way the film is written and the directing style from Kenneth Lonergan really surprised me. As the main plot unfolds relating to the nephew, we learn about Lee's past gradually across the film's duration, and I love this more sort of nuanced method of storytelling, where Lee's backstory is an excellent hook to keep you engaged, delivering some real gut-punching reveals, and I really enjoyed this film overall, and appreciated the somewhat uplifting ending. This is definitely worth checking out, despite it being such a sad film. Starring a young Johnny Depp and Leonardo DiCaprio, we have What's Eating Gilbert Grape. This is oddly another film I ended up checking out thanks to a memorable parody I saw elsewhere, a brilliant American Dad episode where the plot of this film is loosely retold using talking squirrels.
Arnie, stop chewing on the line! Hi! Hi, Gilbert!
I ended up recommending this film to a friend who was familiar with that episode of American Dad, and his response was, I'll stick with the talking squirrels, which I don't blame him. But this film genuinely was very comical, for better or worse. It was very heartfelt, where Johnny Depp plays Gilbert Grape, the eldest son of a family who is given a lot of responsibility. He works hard, but also has to take care of his brother Arnie, played by DiCaprio, and Arnie is described as having an intellectual disability, and I genuinely felt bad for laughing at certain moments where his behavior gets pretty out of control, and there are moments where it is genuinely played for laughs, such as Arnie constantly trying to climb a water tower, for example, where the cinematography makes moments like this funny in a big reveal sort of manner, especially when other characters are involved, and things become all the more complicated for Gilbert, who starts accidentally neglecting Arnie, where he sees a potential love interest in the character of Becky, played by Juliette Lewis. Overall, I really did like this film. It was very fun, definitely worth checking out if you're a fan of light-hearted comical drama films. A few animated titles now, first up beginning with Princess Mononoke, a Studio Ghibli film I've been wanting to watch for a little while. I recently picked up a whole bundle of these movies over eBay, which I'll do a separate video covering those on the channel at some point. But this title was recommended to me by various subscribers, and I'm very glad that I checked it out. Definitely has some, I guess, weird and demonic elements to it, with the protagonist of Ashitaka being physically cursed for saving his village from a very unique attack from a giant wild boar, and he journeys into the forest in the hopes of finding a cure for this curse, where he meets Princess Mononoke and intervenes to try and stop another ongoing conflict that will destroy the forest land. I loved the engaging story potential, and I was very surprised at just how excessive the blood and gore animation was. Beautifully done, and definitely a title I would recommend if you're into animated movies for sure. Imported from Australia, we have a couple of Adult Swim DVD box sets, the first being the complete series of C-Lab 2021. Somewhat inspired by the Hanna-Barbera series C-Lab 2020, but this show has a more adult twist on things, and this was created by Matt Thompson and Adam Reed, best known for creating Archer and the very underappreciated comedy Frisky Dingo, and this was one of the first Adult Swim shows before Adult Swim even became a thing. And this show lasted for only 4 seasons, a couple of years, and it's great to have the entire show on DVD. If you're a fan of comedy similar to the likes of Archer, I am sure you would appreciate a series like this. So that is the complete series box set of C-Lab 2021. Next up we have a compilation set from Adult Swim referred to as the Meat Tray. Kind of an unusual DVD set. The label that produces these, called Madman Entertainment, made a couple of different releases in this style. Another that springs to mind is the Adult Swim grab bag that's on my hit list. But with this set, it includes 3 of the more obscure shows that I don't believe have had individual DVD releases. I may be wrong with that, however. So we have Lucy, the Daughter of the Devil, 12 Ounce Mouse, which was created by Matt Malero, who co-created Aqua Teen Hunger Force, and finally Tom Goes to the Mayor, known for its very limited animation and absurdist levels of comedy. I've actually not checked out any of these shows as of yet, but if I do enjoy them enough, I'll be sure to make a video about this set at a later date. It's the beginning of the end as I approach the King of the Hill finale, the final season, which I recently finished the 12th season, which I had a lot of fun with, and I've just started the final season DVD set, and honestly, it's going to be really strange not having more episodes of this show to watch. I've been watching King of the Hill on and off now for the past 3 years, if not maybe slightly longer, and it's become somewhat of a comfort show in all honesty, something that has been very easy viewing, that I know I'll enjoy, definitely a series that I will definitely be going back to once I have finished it, and I did do a Season 1 review a few years ago. It's a much older video. If you want to go ahead and check that out, then by all means you can do so, but I may look to review each season in the near future if I do decide to go ahead and revisit this show. So that is Season 12 and Season 13, the final season of King of the Hill. A duplicate pickup for the collection? Well, kind of. We have Family Guy Season 10, but this time this is the limited edition packaging, which I made a video a few months ago looking at strange limited edition Family Guy DVD sets, and one thing that I love collecting from those in particular are the replica scripts, so I decided to pick this up over eBay for dirt cheap, which I'll probably end up taking what's left of this to the charity shop, because if somebody else wants it, at least they'll make use of the episodes themselves. But I really wanted the script from this one, which is for the episode Brian and Stewie, the 150th episode of the show. Speaking of the episodes, I believe this is made up of Season 9 broadcast episodes, if memory serves. The Extended Mansion Murder Mystery episode I recall being on this DVD set, which is an excellent episode, very well written, which I may actually give a rewatch at some point. But yeah, Season 10 of Family Guy, I just grabbed this literally for the script, so I'll take this to the charity shop. At least somebody will then get some usage out of it. 15 episodes spread over 3 discs, and there's a look at what should have been included, which the t-shirt sadly was not included in this, but regardless, it is what it is. I've already got the standard version of this in the collection, so it's pointless hanging on to this version. Last up for the DVDs, we have a drama series from the late 90s, The Lakes, starring John Sim, one of my favourite actors, and I recall watching the first season of this probably about 5 years ago now, and regrettably, I just didn't continue the show. I just genuinely forgotten most of the plot by this point, so I decided to rewatch the first episode, which is very much feature length. It's about an hour and a half. And overall, this is a great coming-of-age story where Sim moves from his parents' house in Liverpool over to the Lake District, where he meets a girl, holds down a job, but struggles to resist the temptation of gambling his earnings. Lots of conflict, some very clever writing that blurs the lines of realism, and I am looking forward to finishing this series in its entirety, so that is The Lakes. That's going to do it for my Blu-ray and DVD update for March/April of 2024. I hope you did enjoy. Please leave me a like down below if you did. Drop me a comment if there's any titles here that you have seen or any recommendations you may have. As always, I love hearing your thoughts and opinions. And for more videos, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, DVD Review Studios.
Are you threatening me?